Hello, and welcome to another week of Abuse Cartoons live streaming. So, yeah, another day, another time. Just trying to fit it in when I can. It's been, a little tricky schedule-wise, and I still don't have a date I think that is working well for many people. But, hey, we'll figure this out one way or another. And, sorry, maybe making some noise trying to get this mic adjusted, but as you can see, another beautiful rainy day. We're in the midst of the rainy season in Japan, so it's kind of a monsoon season, even though I guess it's just heavy downpours of rain for almost a month, most of the month of June and sometimes early July. And last year it was very late in the season, and this year pretty much right on time, and we already had our first typhoon, and I think the U.S. had their first hurricane that hit Mexico, the west coast of Mexico. So, yeah, lots of fun things already happening in this early summer. But let's see if all of this is working. And also a little setup trouble, so hopefully nothing is acting too strange. I'm still suffering under that creators update. Some random things are being difficult, including my pressure sensitivity, so it may not... Oh, and the color that I'm writing in here. It may not be so smooth, but we'll give it a shot. Yeah, it seems to be better. So every time the system is restarted, it seems to change. So it's really hard, and I don't know, I can't remember when that exactly happened, but that just became the kind of normal procedure for Windows. Is just it was constantly restarting, and you never knew, like, if things loaded in a certain incorrect order and conflicted with each other, what was going to happen. Sometimes they would and sometimes they wouldn't. It would just be these magical kind of fixed itself kind of things when you're troubleshooting Windows. So yeah, we're still doing that, whatever, 10-15 years later. So that's fun. Sorry, just trying to get a little warmed up here, but yeah, so that's always going to be something. And I guess, as long as you're using a technology or online talking about using a technology, people are always going to be frustrated with the strange limitations. You hear people on podcasts or YouTube channels complaining about the Adobe Premiere or whatever software they're using, how buggy and inconsistent it is. And I guess that's just, I don't know, part of the wonderful digital experience, part of the world we're living in now, where you're just, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, where you're just constantly commenting about, I guess, the medium, although, I don't know, referring to, working digitally as a medium is a little frustrating, because there seems to be some extra amounts of nonsense. It's like, if you were comparing acrylics or watercolor, they would have, certain things you could and couldn't do, and certain things that kind of, limited you stylistically or pushed you certain ways. But with digital, that's not really the case. You're just limited or kind of confined to the mistakes and the poor design of software and things. So I don't know, it feels a little odd to talk about working digitally as a medium, because there's so much more involved. You're not constantly dealing with rebooting paintbrushes or having paper crash on you. So yeah, there's not good equivalents in kind of analog world to what are kind of the all-consuming kind of issues of working digitally, and the frustration. But I think, as I've stated before, the ephemeral quality of digital work is horrible. It's disgusting, and I think it's informed a whole generation of artists about how throwaway their work is, and how, you know, you're only as good as your last, you know, piece, and you keep, you know, going and going. And I guess, you know, there is some that is useful to artistic process in certain ways, but at the same time, I don't think you engage as much with individual pieces because they're infinitely duplicatable and insanely fragile. They can just disappear, and you can't be tied. You can't kind of fetishize the materials or the object itself anymore, which I think has always been a part of the plastic arts. So that's definitely lost in this weird digital age. And then, you know, so whether you like it or not, you're forced to accept that things don't have a value. So you know, whatever your style or technique or whatever you're doing digitally, you just have the same. You have the same situation as you know, someone drawing on the beach in sand and waiting for the waves to come in and wipe it away. So it's that definitely, I think, informs people's work in a not very good way, and maybe the big reason for people giving up on a lot of original things and, you know, opting for fandom and things because they're having trouble you know, connecting with their work in a certain way, and would just prefer to have others tell them what to do, and, you know, are just content with making pretty pictures instead of, you know, doing something particularly challenging or interesting. And of course, you know, people now are so afraid to, you know, be making any kind of comments, you know, any kind of commentary in work that they do. So you never know what all that creates, but I think it's a bit odd, a bit strange. But yeah, and I can't say that I'm immune to that sort of thing too. I think all this digital work has definitely changed me and made me less invested artistically. You know, especially when I switched this cartoon. You know, not that I'm calling this art. I'm just calling this fun. But when I switched the cartoon to being drawn digitally, so were no longer originals. You know, no longer physical originals. It changed my thinking a bit. And there are still a lot of those, though. The first maybe first 10 years, there are still the original A4 paper. So anyone interested in those, have a look at my Patreon, and I should probably put those on a website or something as well. So because it doesn't, a subscription, you know, or a whatever that is, a you know, a contribution or a sponsorship, however you refer to Patreon. I'm trying to draw styrofoam inserts, but they're not quite looking like that. I guess it kind of works. Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense with physical goods as much, but yeah, I'd like to share that. So I've done, or I've sent, you know, original copies of a few of my cartoons to fans over the years, and I don't know if that's still a thing. I don't know if it's still, you know, that fun or that precious. And the interesting thing about when I was drawing with Sharpie on paper is that I would just commit to every line, so they're a little bit wonky, but also I would leave mistakes. There's a lot of mistakes, you know, a mistake being something, you know, like drawing a box and then doing this and this little line here, just staying in the kind of imperfect version. The imperfect version on paper, and then of course I would edit it on the computer when I colored it in Photoshop. So yeah, so that always kind of existed because the coloring was always done digitally because it was a web cartoon, and you know, first and foremost existed digitally. So that was always the case. So, you know, I unwillingly or reluctantly, you know, kind of always was in that world. And I think that started, you know, once the internet kind of picked up and you could do cartooning and things, you know, webcomics and things online. That always, you know, just kind of took over my work. And in some ways, you know, I don't think I'd have an audience at all without the internet. But at the same time, I, you know, don't like the nature of things online very much. It's odd and, you know, insanely unsatisfying. And that's why I think doing, you know, comic shows and, you know, Comic-Cons and shows is important, because it's nice to have a connection with real people and understand, you know, kind of the response that you're getting face to face, instead of, you know, just people raging at you on Twitter, or, you know, trolling you on Instagram comments or whatever. I think that's a weird way to live, and how so much of the time it's actually people without any hatred or bad intent. They're just bored out of their minds, you know. So it's just like, you know, killing ants with a magnifying glass, or, you know, crushing beer cans. That's about as much thought as they put into the, you know, comments that they gave threatening you or calling you, you know, a name or whatever. So it's very sad. It's a very sad time indeed. Yep, but things are changing. And I read a really good, what was it? Thomas Paine quote. There was something just recently that was, it was, yeah, reading about the current state of politics or something, and there was a really great quote in it that said, you know, it's arrogant to think that that we should be ruled by laws and rules and ideas given to us by dead men, where, you know, each generation should be allowed to create their own, you know, rules for living and governance and everything. And I think we're in one of those kind of difficult times, like the, you know, kind of late 60s, early 70s, where there's a lot of social, you know, rethinking, and people are kind of reprioritizing and trying to get rid of, you know, a lot of bad assumptions that we've lived under for a long time. And there's growing pains involved in that. And I think America has always, or the US, you know, whoa, that's a terrible has always had that, because they're kind of socially, you know, whether people are willing to admit this or not, they're America's pretty socially agile compared to a lot of other parts of the world, and can, you know, adjust their thinking. Generation can kind of create its own rules and its own thinking much easier than exists in a lot of other countries. I mean, just comparing it to Japan, there is very little flexibility and very little rethinking of things, and the government so oftentimes has a parental kind of role, where they know best and they're going to tell you how to raise your kids, or what's wrong with manga or whatever. Just the very strange role that politicians and government thinks it has here. And you know, it works, you know, well for its own culture, but at the same time it's not very agile. And I think that's what's interesting about America, is that each generation is able to kind of, you know, reassess things and push out kind of old ideas that just don't operate anymore. But differently to, you know, like the you know, flower child movement, I think in the, you know, late 60s and 70s, it's much more aggressive and much more ugly. The kind of social changes being demanded, and people are acting entitled. And I think it's just because of how kids were raised, their politics and their political movements have a little bit more unpleasant. It's not, and maybe because the older generations now that, you know, live through the 60s aren't intimidated by social change, but they are more civil about it. And I think that's why you have this the rebellious tone of this demanding and entitled acting of a lot of social movements. And I think that's just the nature. That's just part of the change. That's what makes it different and what makes it revolutionary in its way. And you just have to tolerate that, because that is how it is. And so that is it's very funny for me. Oh, hey, is that a napkin? Sure it is. It's very funny for me, because just getting older, you feel that that push and that change, and the culture is kind of done with you. You start to feel that very, very keenly, as you get older. So just be ready for it, however old you are that I'm talking to right now. Be ready for it, because the world will stop needing you very quickly, and or not need you, but not be interested in your opinion about how things are very quickly. And I think that's very different now, and it comes as part of the digital age, and part of how we value certain knowledge. I think just the the ability to use certain technologies, or to adapt to using smartphones or software, or whatever, is highly prized. And as soon as you kind of slow down in your rate of development of adopting every new technology or every new style of communication or whatever, then you are instantly old. And I think that's it's a pretty rough thing. So the rate of kind of obsolescence in people and people's thinking and people's mindset is much shorter than it ever was. I think people in their heading into their 30s are already saying, oh, I'm kind of old and out of it. So we're valuing this very, very tiny and young group of people adopting and shaping how we interact socially and things. So I don't know, that's pretty funny. But okay, yeah, I think everything is going okay. I hope the sound is okay, and lighting seems to be doing okay. It's whenever the sun isn't so bright behind me, then the window's not all blown out, so you can see the craziness of of the street that this place is on. Okay, so I think we've got something here. Trying to think. Yeah, I didn't have a big a topic or anything kind of in my head for this week. I was just happy to have some time to actually get online and do this. I was worrying we were getting towards the end of the week, and it just was not working. But let's see here. That's that button. These are the boxes. So these two are what I want. So happy that this worked out, but at the same time, not a lot of prep for what to talk about. But sometimes that works well, because then I can just kind of react to what's going on, and then if somebody yells at me or says messages anything online, I can react to that. So it's probably not that necessary to have structure, and hopefully an interesting conversation comes out of just this improvisation and kind of free thought. I was going to entice and amaze you with a bottle of, what is it, Coca-Cola Clear, that they have only in Japan right now, but it's just Diet Coke. It's just Diet Coke without a color, so I don't think it's any great amazing feat, because I think Diet Coke is pretty much artificially flavored Coke anyhow. But that's maybe I will bring for the live stream a few examples of the funny clear drinks they have here. So there's this trend now of iced tea that's clear, and cafe latte that's clear, so it just looks like water and has pretty mild flavor, but it does taste like the thing it's supposed to be, iced tea or a fruit drink or whatever, but it's completely clear in color. So someone in some laboratory stumbled upon something that colored without, or flavored without coloring, or whatever, where they found flavoring that doesn't cause any coloration. So that's been a big trend. Maybe I'll bring in a few drinks to show you, and if you're lucky enough to be in Japan during this trend, you can try all the crazy drinks. It's amazing how you know, our senses are kind of tied together, and it's difficult to taste something that's not quite the, you know, the color you're expecting, and the thing that, you know, doesn't have the coloration. The thing that I always think of is those like freezer pops, you know, from the or who knows, you know, from my childhood, but maybe from even my parents' childhood. Those just like plastic little tubes of colored liquid that you froze, and they were just sugar and water and coloring, and I think they were all exactly the same flavor for the most part. Maybe they're just the cheap ones that I always had were this not flavored particularly differently. It was sugar and water and coloring, but a blue tasted different from a red, tasted different from a yellow, and I don't know. I don't know if they're still even being made, so there's no way to check on that, but I'm not sure if they were ever even flavored differently, but you put a lot mentally into it because of just, you know, that expectation that a certain color of something has. Oh, this is green, it'll taste like green apple or lime or whatever. That expectation that it put in you. So it was very funny to yeah, to see that when you're taking the color completely out and still like, oh yeah, I guess it does taste exactly like iced tea, but okay, not super comfortable about you know, how they did it and what you're actually tasting. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, actually, I can just take all this out, can't I? And reverse it. So I can do this. That should be good. A little bit more variety in this. Objects, I think, is good. There we go. All right. Yeah, so I'm just I'm thinking of those, like all those odd inserts that are inside boxes holding things together. Yeah, and actually I think I do want to, layer these. Pay attention to some layers and layer them on top of each other. There we go. Yeah, help tighten up the composition a little bit here. So overlap some things, and yeah, I think that makes more interesting. I still don't have the hang of this Photoshop update, and it's not a new one. I think it's years old, and still I'm making all kinds of mistakes. And I mean, I literally use Photoshop almost every single day. It's so silly. That's the thing I was talking about, I guess, the getting old thing you don't adapt, and why they think they need to keep updating software is ridiculous. Well, because I know why. Because it's not software anymore. It's a service, and they have to provide you with a reason to keep subscribing to their service. Miserable. Oh, one thing I've been trying to catch up on recently is Westworld. Second season of Westworld. I don't know if I want to go too much into this, but I'm getting really disappointed with how HBO is running their shows. I'm a huge fan of the Sopranos era of HBO, and how good, amazing writing and amazing actors they got for all of the shows that were out around that time. Trying to think of like I don't even know. I'm probably confusing certain cable things when I'm thinking like 6 Feet Under and uh, yeah, all of that Sopranos era stuff, that kind of late '90s stuff, and both Game of Thrones and Westworld. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Westworld, but both of the, I'm not sure if it's like a management. These are management decisions or things that are coming up, coming down from higher up. But I remember that Sony memo leak where I think it was HBO. It was somebody associated with, I think, Game of Thrones or as some cable drama, that they actually caught a memo that had a kind of a minimum required amount of nudity per episode or something, that they were kind of basing some of their production guidelines on. And that was really disgusting and really depressing. But it does seem like these cable dramas are doing this really weird thing where they are starting off with just a lot of showing a lot of skin in the first season, and then you'll read articles like you read after season 1 of Westworld that one of the actresses was very uncomfortable in the scenes, and Westworld kind of had a weird excuse for nudity where they just, the host, the the android people are like sitting in office chairs and like labs being serviced or whatever, being repaired after they were murdered in the park. And so it was a weird, uncomfortable nudity. There was very little like context, much less nudity in context of story or anything. And it was just these characters, sitting in chairs or standing, in inanimate, like turned off or whatever, being repaired by technicians, and they were fully nude. So that was an odd choice, and I guess that created some uncomfortable sets, and so there were some complaints about that. So the weird thing that same thing happened with Game of Thrones, where very early on, like the first or second season, it was a lot of there was always prostitutes and it was very involved, and although love scenes were very explicit. And then they just kind of stepped back from that, and it's not important to the story. Well, it was never important to the story. So obviously, in later seasons, when they're pulling back from that, it's very depressing how they, just have to kind of admit, yeah, that was just to kind of hook a certain demographic, and so what the actors have to go through, to get these roles and say, well, there's going to be a lot of nudity involved, but maybe by the third season you'll be fine. Who knows? Or when a show becomes successful, the actors may have more power to negotiate. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore, which seems to be the case, at least for Game of Thrones. So yeah, I'm really unhappy with so they do that strange thing. So it changes the tone of the show, and both Game of Thrones and now Westworld are doing this thing where they're leaning so heavily on their female characters and basically bringing them to the forefront. And so you have the kind of major plot lines of, and I haven't gotten very far, I think I'm like episode 4, but the major plot lines are all revolving around these different groups of characters, and each one is led by a strong, driven woman. And it's just silly. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and they've kind of pushed a lot of the male characters, kind of back. And I don't know. I don't understand the writing, and the other thing that I don't quite understand is how quickly these shows, I noticed this was Star Trek Discovery and now with Westworld, one season, not even one season for some of these shows, and they think they have all of this like fan interest in certain characters, and they have this kind of currency that they can cash in, and oh yeah, you're going to want to see this character do this, or you're going to want to see him do this, or you're going to want to see this couple get together, like very quickly, they haven't even told much of a story, and they're already doing this kind of fan service stuff. And I don't know if it's just a symptom of the age we're living in, but tell a decent story and make decent characters and knock it off with the fan service in season 1 or season 2. I don't know why they think that they need to do that. There's just so much like, yeah, the fans are going to love this. You feel that in the writing, and you never felt that in the dramas, the Sopranos era kind of dramas in the 90s and early 2000s. You never felt that, oh, yeah, they're going to make them do this because the fans want this. And, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But at the same time, maybe when you look at a show like Mad Men, that it was a basic cable show, so it didn't have the symptom of the starting off very sexy and then kind of that disappearing. But they didn't do fan service. I think they were writing for the characters, and the interest in that show kind of dwindled. So by the last season and the finale, I don't think it had the audience that it did. So this may be just an economic thing. All of it, I'm sure, is an economic thing, but it's kind of disgusting and not making me very interested in, keeping up with these shows. And it's just very distracting. They're leaning so hard on characters that they think are popular. I don't know what they're basing that on Twitter. I mean, I don't know if those are very accurate demographics or accurate audience response. The people that are going to live tweet or be like, yeah, hooray for this character on Twitter, I don't think are the core or the majority of the audience. So it's odd. Everything is feeling so fan based, fan service. And even some of these older properties like like Star Trek Discovery feels like fan fiction. It doesn't even feel like actual Trek. So I don't know, we're in a weird time. And I guess even Star Wars is starting to feel like that too. Don't get me started, but yeah, Star Wars is starting to have a real fan fiction feel, like it's not actually being written by people that where did that come from, that have an investment in the world or telling interesting stories with those characters. They're just like kind of responding too much to the history and the fandom, and there's got to be a word for it, but those characters popularity and like how they're received and how they're thought of outside of the actual fiction of the world, how they're seen as like pop culture, in pop culture. And I think that's really bad for storytelling. I think we're gonna have a lot of unwatchable television because of that, and that's just too bad. But there are definitely people making decisions higher up that are just, they have no idea what they're doing. All right, I think we've got something here. Make sure I'm not blah 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 too long. Yeah, so this might not be a super long one, but hopefully we can do an hour, about an hour this week. But yeah, so I'm having trouble. I really want to get to the Japanese parts. So I really like the actor that they chose for Musashi, or from what I've read, Miyamoto Musashi in the East World. I don't know what they're calling it, but yeah, I guess they've already revealed kind of a Bombay, or kind of an Indian based world. They've already revealed that. And what's wrong with pretty people? I don't quite understand why so much of this casting is people that are hard to look at. I thought that's kind of part of the thing. I mean, you want good actors, and of course good actors aren't always beautiful, but at the same time there's bad actors that are bad looking, and I don't understand the thinking behind that. When they're introducing new characters, like, really, we have to look at this guy or look at this girl for a whole season? It's very strange for me. But I am of a different time, I guess. What is going on? No. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I accidentally made a new document. But yeah, it's odd. Feels strange. Actually, yeah, I think it's boom. Yeah, I forget my fake McDonald's look here. Maybe I'll just do it this way. Eh. Okay, something like that. Oh, maybe this color needs to be something kind of outside of that, the palette that I've got going on with the fast food. A bright blue button. All right. Yeah, something like that. And my phone just died. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's the details. Oh yeah, and actually I think I want to do another layer and do some kind of condensation. But yeah, I always like that on the cups. Those waxy paper cups always seem to have that weird problem. Yeah, that's the funny thing. Feeling that here, especially in Japan, they're so big into their teas and things in recyclable, what they call the PET bottle, the whatever their polyethylene, whatever the chemical name is that is referring to. But the PET plastic is the constantly recyclable, and it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So those used to be very useful bottles to use for other things, like little planters or storing things in or whatever, because they're very thick plastic. But now they're getting so thin that they're almost like a plastic bag with a cap. Like if it wasn't for the liquid inside of them, they wouldn't have much structure at all. So it's feeling very strange, because sometimes if you grab it too hard and you open the cap, you actually can squeeze some of the usually the water out, because of how thin they've made the plastic, which they're just trying to use less material and maybe less process for less involved, the process of recycling. But that's getting really odd for me, how thin some of these bottles are, because they're getting almost so they don't function very well as bottles. There we go. Put a little shadow on there. But yeah, so maybe I will start to kind of break up, like I think I was talking about last week, kind of break up the drawing parts with something a little fun, give you a reason to stick around. So break up the in-between cartoons, do a quick little some Japanese fast convenience store thing or something fun. Something to keep you all current on snacks and pop culture here in Japan. Although I'm not immersed in the pop culture here so much. That's the funny thing, and I think maybe people feel that everywhere if they're a fan of, if you're a fan of like British comedy or something, and this is more of a pre-internet thing, but then you go to England and I want to immerse myself in the amazing world of British comedy, and you realize basically the stuff that they exported to your country is about as good as it gets, or in your culture the stuff that's going to resonate or do the best, and a lot of things that didn't make it over to your country are not very good, and they don't translate well, or they don't resonate very well with your kind of mindset and everything. So you see that sometimes. Definitely with anime and things in Japan, and I think maybe even before American TV started to have that fandom, fan service problem. We could have learned from anime that was going to be a problem, because it does seem like everybody that's involved in anime anymore was a fan of it, when they were younger. So they're bringing this fan sensibility to it, and there's just not good original work now. It's just hard to find anything that feels very original, isn't very derivative, and that doesn't have this just horrible fan service. Like they're creating characters specifically to be liked and thought of in certain ways, or the show has 4 female characters and they're always fitting these odd, these types that, the games, the dating sims and stuff always have. So I don't know. That kind of stuff is very depressing. But so like I'm saying, like coming over here and thinking, wow, I'm gonna have the, gonna be getting right at the anime, the uncut, pure version of a lot of the Japanese anime as it comes out, and boof, yeah, most of it is not worth even talking about. It's just horrible, but it's a business and they're just churning stuff out, like popular music and all other television so sort, and so much of it is for all kinds of different audiences. So of course, and that's the thing too that I learned coming here is that the cup's yellow before, I can't remember. Coming here is that they do have a lot more genres for specific kind of groups of people or age groups and gender and things in Japan than they do in the US. And when things are released in the US, at least prior, I was talking like 90s and earlier, they didn't really pay much attention to that. So they release things that are based on like girls manga or things that were released for younger people to basically college age students in America. Like all anime was just kind of came out for that kind of group, and that's not quite how it is. So it makes it a little odd, because then you have a lot of very childish, odd stuff that you thought was for you, or might you were interested in when it was imported to the US, that you come here and you realize, oh, that's for kids. That's a really, it's just like the, feels like the weird young adult, the YA book thing here, where you see adults reading YA books on trains and things. It's a bit silly. And I think, isn't that the happy part about being an adult, is that you can read grown-up books with grown-up subject matter? But maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's a big part of what's going on now, is we're seeing the a generation of adults, people in their 30s that are married and have kids, that want to read their kids' books, basically. Just I don't know. I totally didn't understand when that started with kind of the Harry Potter boom. I totally didn't understand what that was based on. Yuck. But anyhow, so we'll go back and rate these later. So let's just get some color on these images and see what's going on. But yeah, I just don't get it. I've had some fun conversations with people that are kind of talking about the weird assumptions that young adults books make, that do make it really surprising that they're so popular with people that are not young adults. They're old adults. They're well into adults hoods. Yeah, I don't know, but it might be the same kind of I'm definitely not innocent of liking childish or regressive kind of things. Some of my hobbies are pretty childish and pretty based on stuff that I missed out on in my childhood or didn't get enough of, and now they got some disposable income, you're gonna waste it on those kind of stupid things. So I'm definitely guilty of that, as a lot of my generation. In fact, you can probably see a Gundam model right behind me. So that's definitely a childish thing that I didn't have when I was a kid. But yeah, we're just in a weird time with some of that. The same way that I enjoy those sorts of childish things, I don't immerse myself in odd stories written about those universes or whatever that are for kids. It's odd. But that was interesting too. Yeah, that came up with a few weeks ago, maybe even last month. uh, Games Workshop was releasing the young adult young adult Warhammer books, the 40K universe young adult books. And so that's interesting because I think everybody knows that that's a market and that there is crossover in that market. So why not? But if I would think about any property or any world that would be less suited for young adult fiction, it would definitely be the Warhammer universe. But yeah, it's funny. So they're going to try that, and I think the idea is, make it a kind of gateway, get people familiar with a world or characters or a lore, and then you can sell that to them. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess this is something I think I was actually considering this as a topic. That this is something that I am kind of disgusted by, and it plays into the kind of thing we're all tied up in now, the representation and kind of wanting people to feel included in certain things, show female heroes and capable women doing things like those sorts of things that are really really now there's a lot of emphasis on that. I think it's kind of unrealistic to want, especially as because we have not even begun to be as diverse as we're going to be, like in the next 20 years. I think it's as people intermarry and gender issues and sexuality and things keep resolving, we're going to be even more diverse and more hard to represent than I think ever. And so to have these weird ideas about, well, these kinds of people need representation, well, soon there's going to be these kinds of people that are half this and half that. How are you going to represent them? How are they going to be shown, in whatever you're looking for, whatever way is necessary? It's just going to get harder and harder to show every possible variation of kind of person that there is. And so I was watching something about the kind of history of kids cable television and the rise of Disney Channel in the 90s, I guess. They were kind of becoming irrelevant and silly, and they're just replaying old Chip and Dale and whatever. And maybe after the decline of the that Mickey Mouse Club thing that spawned all of those horrible pop stars from the 80s, or the 90s. But the one thing they were talking about was the approach that Nickelodeon took, and I think it started in, I think, kids advertising, TV commercials for kids. So I was already kind of aged out. I was already high school or teenager, so I wasn't seeing much of this, but I do remember it. I remember it, existing, kind of being a thing. And this whole idea of showing kids doing everything and being kids, and that they were, I forget the wording was something ridiculous, like kids are the ultimate. This was kind of Nickelodeon's I forget, kind of their their mission statement or whatever. Kids are the ultimate underdogs, and we really need to show them show them how they're capable of doing anything, and how the adults and teachers are the enemies, and kids are fighting for whatever their right to be heard or party or whatever exactly their needs are. But you saw that in a lot of the 90s, juice box commercials and snacks and even breakfast cereals and things. It's just like, oh, these stupid adults just don't get you, and you need to show them. And so that mentality made it into the programming. So there's a lot of shows during that era that were representing kids as kids. And so you're having Kid Spy and Kid James Bond and Kid whatever, kind of that Muppet Babies version of everything. But it had to be a kid, because kids can't relate to adults. They can only relate to kids. And so it was that kind of death of imagination, and kind of creative thought where you were picturing yourself as someone that wasn't your race or wasn't your gender and just identifying with them as a hero and capable and things. And no, that doesn't exist unless you actually see it. Like you can't be somebody who you don't look like. I mean, I think that is a whole weird thinking that came out of that. We must represent kids, and kids, market directly to kids. And I think it's that, maybe it was that baby boom echo that they were kind of going after, like all the baby boomers getting remarried in their 30s and 40s and having the second families and stuff. So maybe that's what they were marketing to. But I think that was a big mistake as far as how it's kind of made people think that nothing pertains to them unless it looks and talks exactly like them, that we're losing a certain amount of empathy for people that don't look and sound like us. And that's really weird. And it was kind of fostered by a lot of that early kids, how they advertised and how they marketed to kids. And people don't really talk about that kind of stuff very much, but it's disgusting. It's really disgusting. And that's why you have a whole generation of people that have zero empathy for anyone that they consider not like them, and how easy it is to vilify people and just say that, well, they're not like us, so they're bad or they're wrong. I think it's really dangerous and really crazy that that was kind of the baseline or the original thought that kind of got put into kids' heads because of how they wanted to market to them. And then how you see the super diverse, like if advertisement for universities and stuff, you see these like super diverse photos of every possible demographic that they think is necessary, marketed to on advertisements for universities and things. They're very super diverse and super multicultural, and I don't think I would have any trouble identifying with a smiling Indian student or Latino student at a university. I wouldn't think, oh, well, I guess I'm not welcome there because I don't see anybody of my race in that picture. But I don't know. This is a whole thing that maybe is not necessary to get into. But I think there's some connection between how marketing was starting to work in the 90s and this idea of how everybody needs to be represented in every possible way, and the lack of empathy, the death of empathy that comes along with that, of not seeing people as like you, or not being able to just project. I think I had an argument with someone about when Empire came out. Lando was was the treacherous character, but he was very cool, and of course you could play as Lando and identify with him, and he and kind of Han Solo were equals. And I didn't say, well, I can't be Lando because we're not the same skin color. Like that's a weird thing that feels very new for me. I don't know, that just feels odd that everybody needs to see themselves on the big screen to feel legitimate. But then again, it's probably also tied to the way that everybody thinks of fame now and everything. So yeah, to have the idea that you can be famous, you do want to see a famous version of yourself. So that may be where this comes from, the kind of narcissism. It's a kind of a new style of narcissism that we're dealing with. And I don't know. I don't know how connected or legitimate any of these things are. I'm not a sociologist or an anthropologist, but I think that it's very interesting that these things kind of this whole narcissistic online thing, and this way that a lot of these kids grew up being told, you have to see yourself to relate to yourself, and so all these kids as heroes nonsense that a lot of the programming had, or kids, functioning as adults and not, not being kids is silly. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how much of that is actually legitimate, and I don't know why these layers keep getting stuck together. There we go. But yeah, I that kind of came up, and I thought that was very interesting. The connection between those things was interesting to me when I was seeing that, because I'd kind of forgotten about that, and that was, I wasn't paying attention to kids television because I was a university student, didn't have kids, and wasn't watching SpongeBob or anything at that time, I guess because I wasn't smoking enough pot. But yeah, so that's an interesting kind of turn that things made, and it fed, I think, pretty well into this situation that we have now, where all these we don't even have latchkey kids anymore. We just have these daycare kids that are screaming for attention, and everyone's against them, and they're making little prison gangs, opposing each other, and have to draw lines. Ugh. All right, enough of that. So let's do some writing. So the packaging. So I was talking about, the what is that called? The inside, the inserts, I guess. The foam inserts or whatever. Yeah. So talking about what was inside this box and how it was not anything valuable. All right, the cardboard inserts didn't seem to be protecting anything at all. That doesn't look like anything at all. Yeah, that was a weird. Yeah, I don't want to. I won't spoil anything, but that was a weird Westworld thing. Yeah, I don't know about that show. I barely got through. There's a real lull. The first season had a real lull, and I barely got through it. And now I'm trying to suffer through the second season. It's just so smart. I'm so tired of. I mean, there isn't an average, and then when they talk about the, the vocabulary writing level of newspapers and magazines and things, that is pretty low. So you don't want to assume anybody is of a certain, or you don't want to write above people's heads or make something that's just so convoluted and incomprehensible that nobody can enjoy it. But the fact that people think they have to go on the internet and have these stupid episodes of Westworld translated to them. I mean, there's themes and stuff, but it's not good writing when you're like, I don't know what's happening, and this scrambly time thing they're always doing is. And as soon as I saw that, as soon as I saw that was their gimmick from the first season, and I didn't like it so much then, but okay, it's fine. Now they just doubled down for the second season, and it's all scrambly, and I think they're trying to justify that by saying, well, that first season was this character's point of view, and their, cognitive bleeding, their robot brain bleeding temporally, things out of time, like putting things in different orders and things. And so that may become a theme and a thing, but make watchable television. That's the most important thing. I just don't like how so much of the stuff is being written for the second season. You don't know, but I know. I don't know how many times characters say some stupid thing like that. You have no idea, but I really know what's going on. And then okay, so, and you want to, how they're just kind of, barely giving us these things a little bit at a time. It's not clever enough. It's not good enough to be doing that. And we're all going to know that very soon. But I don't know. 4 episodes in. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be judging. I will watch the whole season. I will suffer through the whole season. Anyhow, okay, so the idea was the cardboard inserts didn't seem to be protecting anything at all. Yeah, nothing valuable or important or precious. Yeah, I don't know. I'll go back to that. And so what's another name for the meal set? This is going to be one of those hated odd ideas that no one is going to like. New kind. They were a new kind of low calorie meal combo. Meal combo. Low calorie meal combo featuring a medium drink and a button. Maybe I should say the color of the button. Okay. The new, maybe the new low-calorie meal combo featured a medium drink and a blue button. Yeah, I don't know. It's stupid, but stupid makes me laugh, so I apologize. This new low-calorie combo low-calorie value meal featured a medium drink and a blue button. What do you call that? A blue, the extra button, you know, like you have sometimes sewn onto the shirt tail, or a spare blue button. I don't know. Spare? This new low-calorie This new low-calorie value meal featured a medium drink and a spare blue button. Spare is not a funny word, and it's not working. Loose, extra, and an extra extra button. And a blue button. That's kind of random and stupid, and I think it's going to too many people. But that's how this cartoon was always built. Yeah, I think if I could get comments from everyone that read it, a lot of times it would probably just be ... or question mark would be the comments. The cardboard inserts didn't seem to be protecting anything at all. No, actually, yeah, I think I want to say something about the keeping that. Yeah. The how so keeping a box with all the foam inserts and everything in it, waiting for someday to put the item back in there, and maybe it's long gone or sold or broken a long time ago. Yeah, the box. I need to say cardboard. The box and its inserts waited for the return of a valuable, not valuable, but a breakable item that no longer for an item that no longer existed. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to get the idea across, but it's that, you know, storing those boxes of inserts. The box, the original box. There we go. Original box and its inserts eagerly awaited the return of a valuable item that no longer existed. The original box and its inserts eagerly awaited the return of a valuable item that no longer existed. Existed spelled wrong. Double S. Existed. Okay. That's closer to the funny idea. The original box and its inserts eagerly awaited the return of a valuable item that no longer existed. Okay. That works. Let's check all of my spelling. I'm so glad. I thought for sure spell check was gone. I lean heavily on my spelling being checked. Okay. The new low-calorie value meal featured a medium drink and a blue button. And an extra blue button and a 0-calorie blue button and a, oh man, sorry, I'm way off cam. The new low-calorie value meal featured a medium drink and a blue button. It's gonna be hated, but it's the stupid kind of thing that makes me laugh. I apologize in advance. Okay, so rambled on about all kinds of things, but yeah, so here are the two cartoons. So this low-calorie value meal featured a medium drink and a blue button, and the original box and its inserts eagerly awaited the return of a valuable item that no longer existed. Okay, so thank you so much for being here, and wow, an hour 12. Yeah, I am always happy to spend this time doing the cartoon, and hopefully this kind of opens up the process of doing this and makes it more fun and kind of, you know, interactive, and hopefully if you enjoy the cartoon you can enjoy, you know, some conversation over the course of its creation. And if you'd like to find more, abusecartoons.com. This video is archived on YouTube as well as Twitch. And you can follow me on Instagram. No, not Instagram. There's no Abuse Cartoons. There's my name, but no Abuse Cartoons. And Twitter at abusecartoons.com. Sorry, a bit tired. And if you would like to support this cartoon and see it grow and become even more wonderful, or just get kind of deeper access to it and the original art I was talking about and the books and things that have been created, including some tiny little handmade books and all kinds of wonderful things that existed once upon a time, stickers, t-shirts, oh my god, it's so much. But please consider supporting me on Patreon, patreon.com/abusecartoons. And I will see you again next week, and we will keep doing this, and I hope you enjoy. And thank you so much for watching. See you again. Bye.